Welcome to Mafia Moral Diaries. Please like and subscribe. A starving girl found the lost wallet of the city's most dangerous mafia boss. She thought she was just returning his money, but what he did next changed her life forever. This isn't just a story about honesty. It's about surviving the devil. A desolate, concrete parking lot at dusk. The wind is blowing trash across the asphalt. The evening wind cut through Amara's thin red shirt like a knife. She shivered, clutching her arms, standing alone in the vast, empty lot. Her stomach rumbled, a painful, hollow sound that reminded her she hadn't eaten since yesterday. She looked down at the object in her hand, a heavy, black leather wallet. It felt warm, expensive, and out of place in her calloused hands. Just an hour ago, she had stood outside her apartment building, staring at the eviction notice taped to the door. Amara pleading with a landlord who refuses to look her in the eye. No more extensions, Amara. Pay by tonight or you're out. The memory stung worse than the cold. She had walked away, aimless and defeated, the city lights blurring through her tears. Back in the parking lot, Amara stares at the wallet. Amara, internal monologue, just take the cash. No one is watching. Rent is due. Grandma needs meds. Just take it. She squeezed her eyes shut, fighting the tears of desperation. The smell of exhaust fumes and city grit filled her nose, grounding her in the harsh reality of her poverty. Amara, dialogue, no, we are poor, but we are not thieves. She hugged the wallet to her chest, just like she had been taught. I'll wait, she whispered. He has to come back. Suddenly, blinding headlights sweep across the darkness. A sleek, black luxury SUV glides into the lot like a shark entering the water. The door opens. Kim Do-hyun steps out. He doesn't look like a man who lost a wallet due to a mistake. He looks like a man who destroys anyone who touches his property. The silence that follows is heavier than any noise. He locks eyes with the girl in the red shirt. Watch the video to the end to see what the Korean Mafia Boss did next. Amara stood frozen in the center of the concrete expanse, the biting wind whipping her thin red shirt against her shivering frame. The black leather wallet in her hand felt impossibly heavy, like a stone that could drag her to the bottom of the ocean. She had been waiting for 40 minutes. 40 minutes of fighting the urge to run, to take the cash that peeked from the fold, enough to pay the landlord, enough to buy groceries for a month, and disappear into the city's shadows. We are not thieves, she whispered to the empty air, her grandmother's voice the only warmth she had left. Then, the darkness broke. Twin beams of blinding white light swept across the lot, pinning her in place like a deer. A black SUV, sleek and massive, glided onto the asphalt with the low, menacing hum of a predator. It didn't slow down until it was mere feet from her, the grille looming like a set of bared teeth. The engine cut. Silence returned, heavier than before. The driver's door opened, and Kim Do-hyun stepped out. He was exactly as the terrifying rumors described, impeccable in a tailored black suit, his posture rigid, his face a mask of cold, unyielding authority. He didn't look like a man who had lost something. He looked like a man who was here to collect a debt. Amara's heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. She took a step forward, her sneakers scuffing softly against the grit. Do-hyun didn't move. He watched her approach with eyes devoid of fear or softness, his gaze tracking her every tremor. She stopped an arm's length away. The air between them crackled with unspoken violence. Slowly, terrified that a sudden movement might be her last, she extended her shaking hand. You've dropped this, Amara stammered, her voice barely audible over the wind. Do-hyun looked at the wallet, then up at her face. He reached out, his movements precise and controlled, and took the leather from her palm. His fingers brushed hers, ice cold against her feverish skin. He didn't count the money. He didn't even glance at the thick stack of bills that would have changed her life. Instead, he flipped the wallet open to a hidden compartment behind the ID slot. His thumb brushed over a small, worn photograph tucked inside. Only when he saw it was safe did his shoulders drop, a fraction of an inch, a microscopic crack in his armor. He snapped the wallet shut and looked at her again. This time, the menace was laced with a terrifying curiosity. He scanned her worn jeans, her cheap shirt, the hollows of her cheeks that spoke of hunger. "There is $5,000 in here," Do-hyun said, his voice deep and smooth, carrying a dangerous edge. "You're starving. I can see it in your eyes." He took a step closer, towering over her. "Why didn't you take it?" "Because it isn't mine," Amara answered, the wind snatching the words from her lips. She didn't offer a noble speech or a plea for sympathy. She simply stated the truth, her gaze dropping to her worn sneakers. To her, honesty wasn't a choice. It was the only thing poverty hadn't been able to strip away from her. Do-hyun stared at her for a long, uncomfortable moment. The silence stretched, heavy and judging, until he finally nodded, a sharp, singular motion. He didn't offer a smile. Men like Kim Do-hyun didn't smile at strangers. Instead, he reached into the breast pocket of his suit jacket. Amara flinched, instinctively bracing for a weapon, but he only produced a small, rectangular object. He held it out to her. It was a card, but not a business card. It was matte black, made of heavy metal rather than paper, and completely blank save for a single phone number embossed in gold. "I do not leave debts unpaid," Do-hyun said, his voice low and absolute. "I do not carry cash for rewards, but I carry this." Amara took the card. It was cold against her skin, heavier than it looked. "If you ever need a favor," he continued, his dark eyes locking onto hers with an intensity that made her knees weak. "One favor. Anything. You call that number." "I thank you," she whispered, though she wasn't sure what she was thanking him for. "Don't lose it," he commanded. "I only answer once." Without another word, he turned and slid back into the leather interior of the SUV. The heavy door thudded shut, sealing him back into his world of silence and power. The engine purred, and the vehicle peeled away, leaving Amara alone in the dark, clutching the piece of cold metal like a lifeline. The walk home felt longer than usual. The adrenaline faded, leaving only the gnawing ache of hunger and the biting cold. By the time Amara reached her building, a crumbling tenement block that smelled of stale cooking oil and damp plaster, her exhaustion was a physical weight. She climbed the stairs to the 4th floor, her legs burning, dreading the empty refrigerator waiting for her. But the refrigerator wasn't the problem. As she reached her door, she stopped dead. A bright orange piece of paper was taped to the peeling wood at eye level. It screamed in the dim hallway light. "Final notice of eviction. 24 hours to vacate." Amara ripped the paper down, her hands shaking so hard she nearly tore it. 24 hours. She had no money, nowhere to go, and her grandmother's medication was running out tomorrow. The walls of the hallway seemed to close in, suffocating her. Panic rose in her throat, hot and acrid. She pushed open the door and collapsed onto the thin mattress in the corner of the room. The orange notice fell to the floor, useless. Slowly, Amara unclenched her other fist. The black metal card sat in her palm, catching the flicker of the lone light bulb. One favor. She traced the gold numbers with her thumb. It was a lifeline, but as she stared at the stark, dark metal, she couldn't shake the feeling that it was also a trap. The pounding on the door shattered the early morning silence. Before Amara could even reach the lock, the wood splintered inward with a deafening crack. 3 men filled her cramped entryway, bringing with them the stench of stale tobacco and cheap cologne. They weren't the landlord. They were the bottom feeders her uncle had borrowed from years ago, men who collected interest in blood when the cash ran dry. "Time's up, little girl," the leader sneered, grabbing her wrist. His grip was bruising, his eyes roaming over the meager apartment with disgust. "If you don't have the cash, we take collateral." Panic, cold and sharp, spiked in her chest. She had nothing, except the heavy black metal card sitting on her nightstand. "Wait," she gasped, her voice trembling. "I can make a call. I can get someone." The man laughed, a harsh, grating sound, but he loosened his grip just enough. With shaking hands, Amara dialed the gold number. It rang once. "Speak." The voice was deep, recognized instantly. "Help," she whispered, tears spilling over.
"Please. They're hurting me."
"Location." She stammered her address. The line went dead. The thugs gave her 2 minutes, mocking her desperation. But the laughter died in their throats when the low, vibrating hum of engines filled the street below. It wasn't the sound of police sirens. It was something far more ominous. Through the open door, Amara saw the thugs glance toward the window, their faces draining of color. 2 black SUVs had blocked the narrow street. 4 men in dark suits stood on the pavement.
They didn't yell.
They didn't draw weapons. They simply stood in a silent, impenetrable line, their hands clasped in front of them, staring up at the apartment with the discipline of soldiers. The sheer weight of their presence sucked the oxygen out of the room. The thugs knew that look. They knew who owned the black SUVs. We didn't know, the leader stammered, backing away from Amara as if she were radioactive. "We're leaving." They scrambled past her, nearly tripping over themselves to escape the building through the back exit. Amara was left alone in the sudden, ringing silence, clutching her phone to her chest. Heavy footsteps echoed on the stairs. Not the frantic scuffing of the thugs, but a slow, deliberate rhythm. Kim Do-hyun appeared in her doorway. He looked violently out of place against the peeling wallpaper, a figure carved from marble and darkness. He stepped inside, his gaze sweeping over the broken door and the eviction notice still on the floor. "The debt collectors are gone," Do-hyun stated, his voice devoid of emotion. "And I have purchased the debt from your landlord. Your eviction is cancelled." Amara slumped against the wall, relief making her dizzy. "Thank you. I don't know how to repay you." "I know," Do-hyun replied. He looked at her, his eyes dark and calculating. "You used your favor to save your life. But money was exchanged to clear your name. I do not run a charity." He gestured to the open door. "Pack your things. My home requires order, and you have nowhere else to go. You will be my personal assistant. You will clean, you will organize, and you will work until the debt is settled." Amara stared at him. It wasn't an offer, it was a command. But looking at the broken door and the empty hallway, she knew she had no choice. She had called the devil for help, and now, he had come to collect. The elevator ride to the penthouse took long enough for Amara's pulse to steady into a dull, rhythmic thud of dread. When the steel doors finally slid open, she stepped into a world that felt less like a home and more like a mausoleum built of glass and shadow. Kim Do-hyun's apartment was vast, a sprawling expanse of black marble floors and floor-to-ceiling windows that looked down on the city like a god watching insects. It was breathtakingly expensive and suffocatingly cold. The air conditioning was set to a temperature that chilled her skin, and the silence was absolute. There were no personal photos, no stray books, no signs of life, just sleek, sharp edges and the smell of ozone and expensive leather. "Your room is down the hall. 3rd door," he had said before leaving her there. "Do not disturb my study unless instructed." But as Amara began to move through the space, the illusion of perfection cracked. The kitchen, though outfitted with chef-grade appliances, was empty save for rows of premium water and expensive scotch. The living area was pristine, but the air felt stagnant, as if the windows had never been opened. It was a cage of isolation. She started in the only place that felt manageable, the chaos of daily living he clearly ignored. In the laundry room, she found piles of discarded designer suits, wrinkled and smelling of stale smoke and dried blood, a stark reminder of how he paid for this view. She washed them, her hands scrubbing at stains she tried not to think about. She organized the entryway, lining up his shoes which had been kicked off in exhaustion. By evening, the silence had become unbearable. Amara found a bag of rice and some dried seaweed in the back of a cupboard, likely a gift from a housekeeper long since fired. She cooked. The smell of steaming rice and sesame oil drifted through the sterile apartment, a warm, invasive scent that fought against the cold air. She set a small bowl on the granite island, then moved to the living room. The heavy blackout curtains were drawn tight, sealing the room in darkness. Amara hesitated, then pulled them back. The golden hour sunlight flooded the room, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air and turning the black marble into warm amber.
The front door beeped.
Do-hyun walked in, his suit jacket slung over his shoulder, his face drawn with the fatigue of a predator who never sleeps. He stopped dead in the entryway.
He didn't look at the view.
He didn't look at the clean floors. His nose twitched, registering the smell of food, and his eyes snapped to the open curtains. The sudden warmth seemed to assault him. He looked at the bowl of food, then at Amara, who stood shrinking against the wall. He walked over to the window, his expression unreadable, and stared at the sunlight hitting his furniture as if it were a contamination. "I didn't tell you to open these," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "It was dark," Amara whispered. "A house needs light." Do-hyun turned to her, and for the first time, she saw something flicker behind his cold mask, not anger, but a profound, unsettling confusion. The warmth didn't comfort him, it exposed him. He looked at the simple meal she had prepared, then back at her, looking as if she had brought a bomb into his fortress rather than dinner. "Wear this," Do-hyun had said, tossing the box onto her bed. "Tonight, you are not my housekeeper. You are my distraction." Inside the box lay a gown of blood-red silk, a deliberate, jarring echo of the cheap t-shirt she had worn the night they met. When Amara stepped out of her room, the fabric clinging to her like a second skin, Do-hyun didn't speak. He stood by the door, adjusting his cufflinks, and froze. His gaze traveled from the hem of the dress to her flushed face, his expression darkening. It wasn't desire that filled his eyes. It was a possessive, terrifying recognition. She was a splash of vibrant life in his monochrome world, a target painted in crimson. "Stay close," he commanded, his hand hovering near the small of her back without touching her, as if he were afraid he might scorch her. "Do not speak to anyone." The gala was a sea of diamonds and sharks. Held in a vaulted ballroom that smelled of expensive champagne and betrayal, the air was thick with tension masked by polite laughter. Amara felt painfully out of place, clutching her clutch like a shield, the red silk marking her as an outsider among the wives and mistresses in their safe, muted pastels. Do-hyun left her side for a moment to speak with an associate, leaving her exposed. Instantly, the water churned. "Well, look at this." A heavy hand landed on her bare shoulder. Amara flinched, turning to face a man with a thick neck and a smile that didn't reach his dead eyes. It was Kong, a rival underboss known for his brutality. He looked her up and down, lingering on the red silk with a sneer that made her feel naked. Do-hyun usually prefers dogs, Kong drawled, his fingers tightening on her skin, bruising the delicate flesh. "I didn't know," he started picking up strays from the gutter. "How much did he pay for the night? Or did he just find you in the trash?" Amara couldn't breathe. The shame was hot and suffocating. She tried to pull away, but his grip was iron. Then, the air in the room seemed to vanish. Kang's smile faltered. He released her shoulder, as if it had turned to molten lead. Amara turned to see Do-hyun standing directly behind her. He wasn't shouting. He wasn't making a scene. He was terrifyingly still, radiating a cold, lethal pressure that silenced the immediate vicinity. "You touched her," Do-hyun said. His voice was a soft, intimate whisper that carried the weight of a death sentence. "Relax, Kim," Kong stammered, stepping back, sweat suddenly beading on his forehead. "I was just admiring the merchandise." Do-hyun stepped forward, closing the distance until he was towering over the other man. His eyes were void of humanity. "She is not merchandise," Do-hyun stated, his voice flat, devoid of mercy. "And if you ever look at her again, I will carve your eyes out and feed them to you." He didn't wait for a response. He placed his hand on the small of Amara's back, firm, claiming, protective, and guided her away. His touch was burning hot through the silk, and as they walked through the parting crowd, Amara realized with a jolt that the monster wasn't guarding her because she was his employee. He was guarding her because she was his. The gala had changed everything. Before, Amara was just a ghost in Do-hyun's machine. Now, she was a lit flare in the dark. She was buying oranges in the open-air market, enjoying the rare afternoon freedom when the air shifted. The chatter of the crowd seemed to dampen, replaced by the heavy screech of tires. A gray van mounted the curb, shattering a display of fruit. Two men jumped out, Kang's men. They didn't look at the crowd. Their eyes locked onto Amara with predatory focus. She dropped her bag, stumbling back, but they were too fast. A hand grabbed her hair, yanking her head back. Kim's weakness. The man spat, a knife glinting in the sunlight. Let's see if he bleeds for you. He never finished the sentence. A gunshot cracked through the air, precise and deafening. The man holding her collapsed, screaming, a hole in his thigh. Amara fell with him, scrambling away on the asphalt. Kim Do-hyun was there. He hadn't been in the car. He had been watching her. He moved through the chaos like a storm, his face a mask of terrifying rage. He didn't just fight. He dismantled them. But as he pistol-whipped the second attacker, a third man surged from the van, a jagged blade aiming for Amara's exposed throat. Do-hyun didn't hesitate. He threw his body between them. The sound of the knife tearing through fabric and flesh was sickeningly wet. Do-hyun grunted, a short, sharp exhalation, but he didn't falter. He drove his elbow into the attacker's temple with bone-crushing force, dropping him instantly. He grabbed Amara with his uninjured arm, hauling her up. "Don't look," he commanded, his voice strained. He shoved her into the waiting SUV, the side of his pristine white shirt rapidly turning crimson. Back at the penthouse, the silence was broken only by Do-hyun's heavy breathing. He sat on the edge of the bathtub, the adrenaline fading to leave behind gray-faced exhaustion. "Let me," Amara whispered, her hands shaking as she reached for the first aid kit. "It is a scratch," he rasped, but he let her peel the ruined shirt from his shoulders. Amara gasped. The fresh gash on his ribs was deep, weeping blood, but it was the old wounds that stole the breath from her lungs. Do-hyun's torso was a roadmap of violence. Burn marks on his shoulder, jagged lines across his back, round puckered scars from bullets that had missed his heart by inches. His skin told the story of a man who had been fighting since he was a child, a man who had absorbed pain so others wouldn't have to. She cleaned the fresh wound, the antiseptic stinging the air. Do-hyun hissed, his muscles jumping under her touch, but he didn't pull away. When she began to stitch the skin, a skill learned from patching up neighbors who couldn't afford hospitals, he watched her face. "Why?" she asked softly, tying the final knot. Her fingers lingered on an old, white scar over his heart. "Why take the knife for me?" Do-hyun looked down at her hand on his chest. He covered it with his own, his grip gentle but unyielding. "Because," he murmured, the truth hanging heavy in the sterile light. "I have enough scars. You should have none." The scotch in Do-hyun's glass remained untouched, the amber liquid trembling slightly as the vibrations of the city hummed through the floorboards. Mr. Choi, his oldest advisor and the man who had taught him how to hold a knife before he could hold a pen, stood by the window, his silhouette cutting a grim figure against the night sky. "She is a liability, Do-hyun," Choi said, his voice dry as parchment. "Today was a warning. Next time, they won't aim for the girl to hurt her. They will aim for her to kill you. You blocked a blade today. Can you block a bullet tomorrow? Can you burn down the city and still keep her from choking on the smoke?" Do-hyun gripped the glass until his knuckles turned white. The ache in his stitched side was a throbbing reminder of Choi's truth. Amara made him human, and in his world, humanity was a fatal defect. To save her life, he had to break her heart. He found her in the library, dusting books she had already cleaned twice. She looked up when he entered, a tentative smile forming on her lips, a smile that felt like a knife twisting in his gut. "Leave," Do-hyun said, his voice cold and flat. He didn't look at her, he looked through her. Amara froze. "What?" "The debt is settled," he lied, walking past her to the desk. He pulled out a thick envelope of cash he had prepared minutes ago, blood money to sever the tie. He tossed it onto the mahogany surface. "Take it. It's enough to move away. Go back to your life. I am done with you." Amara stared at the money, then at him. "Do-hyun, you're bleeding. You need rest, not." "I need you gone," he roared, slamming his hand on the desk. The violence of it made her jump, but he didn't stop. He needed her to hate him. Do you think you matter here? You were a novelty, a diversion. But I am bored now. You don't belong in this penthouse. You belong in the street where I found you. The cruelty hung in the air, toxic and sharp. He waited for the tears, for the fear, for her to run. But Amara didn't run. She didn't even flinch. She looked at his face, contorted with a rage that didn't reach his eyes. She looked at the bandage visible under his open shirt, the wound he had taken for her only hours ago. Slowly, she reached out and pushed the envelope of money back toward him. "You're a terrible liar," she whispered.
Do-hyun stiffened.
"I am not lying. I am dismissing a servant." A servant. Amara stepped closer, invading the space he tried so hard to fortify. "You didn't jump in front of a knife for a servant. You didn't stitch your life back together for a diversion." She stopped inches from him, looking up with a defiance that terrified him more than any assassin. "You are trying to save me, but I am not leaving." "You will die if you stay," he rasped, the mask crumbling. "Then I'll take my chances," she answered. "Because it's safer here with the devil than out there without him." The peace of the penthouse shattered with the glass. One moment, the room was thick with the tension of their argument. The next, the east wall disintegrated in a hail of automatic gunfire. Do-hyun moved before the first shard hit the floor. He tackled Amara, covering her body with his own as bullets chewed through the mahogany desk, turning the library into a storm of splinters and dust. "Move," he roared, hauling her up by her arm. The stronghold was compromised. Kong hadn't just sent a hit squad. He had sent an army. They ran into the hallway, the air thick with acrid smoke and the deafening roar of assault rifles. Men in tactical gear rappelled from the skylights, their boots hitting the marble with heavy thuds. Do-hyun didn't hesitate. He was a demon unleashed, a blur of lethal efficiency. He fired twice, 2 precise headshots, before engaging a third man in close quarters. Amara watched in horror as Do-hyun fought. He twisted the attacker's arm with a sickening crack, using the man's body as a shield against incoming fire. But she saw the cost. Do-hyun's face was ash-gray, sweat mingling with the fresh blood seeping through his white shirt. His stitches had torn. He was fighting on borrowed time. "The panic room is cut off," Do-hyun gritted out, shoving a fresh magazine into his weapon with a trembling hand. "We have to go to the roof." The chopper. They fought their way up the service stairs, the sound of boots pounding behind them. Every landing was a battle. Do-hyun took a graze to the shoulder, a spray of red misting the air, but he didn't slow down. He couldn't. He dragged Amara forward, his grip bruising, his only focus on getting her to the sky. When they burst onto the roof, the wind whipped Amara's hair across her face. The helicopter was there, blades spinning, ready to lift. But the path wasn't clear. Across the rooftop, the access door burst open, and a second wave of Kang's men poured out, blocking the exit. Do-hyun dragged her behind a massive ventilation unit, bullets sparking against the metal inches from their heads. He checked his gun. 1 clip. He looked at the swarm of enemies advancing across the roof. Then he looked at the waiting chopper and finally at Amara. The math was cruel and absolute. If he tried to run with her to the chopper, they would be cut down in the open. If they both stayed to fight, they would be overrun in minutes. There was only one variable that changed the equation.
He could hold the line.
He could buy her the 30 seconds she needed to reach the pilot. He realized with a crushing clarity that he had been wrong before. He couldn't win the war and save the girl. He had to choose. Do-hyun looked at Amara, his eyes burning with a terrifying finality. He touched her cheek, smearing a streak of his own blood on her skin, branding her with his sacrifice. "Amara," he said, his voice strangely calm amidst the chaos. "Run."
"Go!"
Do-hyun roared, shoving Amara toward the waiting helicopter. The blades sliced the air above them, a deafening rhythm that matched the gunfire erupting from the stairwell door behind them. Amara dug her heels in, screaming his name, her tears mixing with the soot on her face. "I'm not leaving you." Do-hyun grabbed her shoulders, his grip desperate. He thrust a heavy, waterproof duffel bag into her arms. "This is yours. New passports. Clean money. Enough to live 1,000 lives." It was the final transaction. She had given him a wallet she couldn't afford to lose. Now, he was giving her a fortune he couldn't afford to keep. He was returning the favor, multiplied by the weight of his sins. "Do-hyun, please," she sobbed, clutching the bag. He looked at her one last time, and for a fleeting second, the monster was gone. There was only the man she had stitched up in the kitchen, the man who had bought her groceries. He leaned in, pressing a fierce, bloody kiss to her forehead. "You gave me a chance," he whispered against her skin. "Now take yours." He spun around, raising his weapon as the metal door burst open. He charged into the hail of bullets, a dark silhouette against the muzzle flashes, drawing the fire away from the aircraft. Amara screamed as the helicopter lurched upward, the city falling away beneath her. She pressed her face to the cold glass, watching the rooftop shrink until Do-hyun was just a speck of darkness fighting an encroaching tide of enemies. Then, they banked into the clouds, and he was gone. 2 years later. The ocean breeze smelled of salt and jasmine, a stark difference from the exhaust and ozone of the city she had left behind. Amara stood on the porch of her small cottage, wiping flour from her hands. She was safe. She was hidden. The money in the bag had bought her peace, a small bakery in a coastal town where no one knew the name Kim Do-hyun. But she still dreamt of him. Every night, she saw the black suit, the blood on his shirt, the way he had looked at her before the end. She scanned the news daily, searching for whispers of a gang war, of a fallen kingpin, but there was only silence. The underworld kept its secrets. A delivery truck crunched up the gravel driveway. The driver handed her a small, brown parcel wrapped in plain paper. No return address. Amara's heart stopped. Her hands trembled as she carried it to the kitchen table. She cut the tape, her breath hitching in her throat. Inside, resting on a bed of tissue paper, was a black leather wallet. It was old, the leather worn and scuffed. It was the same wallet she had held in the freezing parking lot that first night. It was empty, no money, no ID, no hidden photos. Just the leather shell of a past life. Beneath it lay a single sheet of heavy, cream-colored stationery. Amara unfolded it. The handwriting was sharp, precise, and agonizingly familiar. It didn't say, "I love you." It didn't say, "I'm alive." It contained only 3 words, a final answer to the question she had asked him in the parking lot so long ago.
"You saved me."
Amara pressed the note to her chest, sinking to the floor as the tears finally came, not tears of grief, but of release. He had dismantled his empire. He had survived the war. And somewhere out there, the devil was gone, and only the man remained. In the end, Amara didn't just return a wallet. She returned a man's soul to him. Kim Do-hyun had all the power in the world, yet he was a prisoner of his own empire. It took a starving girl with nothing but her integrity to show him the way out. It proves that the most valuable things in life aren't the ones we keep for ourselves, but the ones we are brave enough to give away. What would you have done? If you were starving and found that wallet, would you have kept the money? Or would you have waited in the cold? Let us know your answer in the comments below. And if this story touched your heart, please hit the like button and subscribe for more stories about destiny, love, and redemption. Until next time, never underestimate the power of doing the right thing.